Welcome back to the Startup Screen Printing Podcast. My name is Jesse. Listen, I'm excited to bring you guys a new interview today. I had an opportunity to sit down with a friend of mine. His name is Jonathan. He runs a digital agency called Steep Digital Marketing. They specialize in the financial advisor industry. I actually used to work with Jonathan, worked for Jonathan on his team. And so was excited to really sit down and have a conversation with him. He is a wizard when it comes to Facebook ads and really just digital marketing as a whole. He's just incredibly intelligent, and I'm excited for him to share his expertise with you today. So, if you're looking for opportunities to do digital marketing for your business to promote your screen print business, Jonathan's got some great insights, some great tips on where you should start, where you should focus your efforts as it pertains to setting up some digital marketing and just marketing strategies in general for your business. So, I hope you enjoyed today's interview. Let's go ahead and jump into it right now. Here's Jonathan with Steep Digital Marketing. Well, I'm here with my buddy Jonathan. He's going to talk to us about digital marketing today. I actually used to work for Jonathan at his company called Steep Digital Marketing. So, tremendous digital marketing mind and a great guy, and excited to have him on to kind of teach us about digital marketing, how we get started with our businesses in screen printing, or not in screen printing, but with our screen print businesses. And so, yeah, Jonathan, why don't we just start out by, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to join us and share your knowledge with us. But let's just begin things with a little bit of an introduction from you, from your own words. Tell us who you are and about Steep.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I appreciate being on here, Jesse. And I know we've worked a little bit through scheduling to get here, but I'm excited to be on. Um, I've done a little bit of everything. I joke with people that like my goal out of college was to become as unemployable as I could. And like my first attempt was I became a pilot when I was 16. And then like the year I got my pilot's license was when 9/11 happened. And like pilots that had 10,000 hours couldn't get jobs. So I was like, okay, got to do something
Yeah.
else. Then I went to school for journalism. And like when I graduated was when like the internet age hit and like all the newspapers were going out of business. I'm like, well, it's probably not going to work either. So I kind of just jumped into marketing because an opportunity fell in my lap. But interestingly enough, like people today think about me as the Facebook guy. My first job out of school for like 6 years, I was running a print shop and doing direct mail. And so I've done that, transitioned to digital really in 2015 and have been, really heavily involved in like paid traffic since then on Facebook. But a little bit about Steep, like we're pretty niche, and that may be something we chat about too, is just kind of finding a niche. And a lot of times you want to be everything to everybody. Sometimes being like really, really specific and being the subject matter expert in a little field is oftentimes easier or better. Um, but yeah, what we do is we help financial advisors connect with clients who need planning
Mhm.
help, specifically retirement age people. So we're kind of looking for that affluent baby boomer, like 55 and older. And a lot of times our advisors are getting those people to come to workshops or to webinars, live events, even some direct lead generation. But we're a Facebook certified marketing partner, which just means we're in the top 4% of advertisers. We kind of get a designation specifically for the financial space because that's the sector that we work in the most. But yeah, I've started Seep in 2017. I've experienced some growth. COVID was a little bit of a kick in the pants, if that's a appropriate way to say it, but have really had some good growth the last couple of years here. So yeah, I've kind of made the mistakes that hopefully you don't have to make, and maybe I can teach you something
Great.
about what
Yeah.
not to do.
Yeah, that's the hope. That's kind of how I find things to talk about with my stuff. Is like, what have I screwed up when I'm starting my own print company that I can save somebody else from doing the same thing? Ugh.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, that's
exactly it.
awesome. Well, obviously you're an expert in this field in the area of digital marketing and especially like you said, Facebook stuff. And that's very often an area that people, I hear questions about how do I do this? And my first kind of thought is, do you even need to? So why don't we just kind of start off things with a bit of an overview of what is digital marketing? When you hear the phrase digital marketing, I think some people just immediately think of social media marketing. I think it's more than that. But once you kind of give us an overview of what's included when somebody says the phrase digital marketing and what are the different areas that they need to focus on in order to have a good, well-rounded digital marketing strategy?
Yeah. Well, I think like just to back up even one step further, like what is marketing? And essentially the only goal of marketing is to connect people. It's to make an introduction between you and another person, whether it's in person or online, over the phone, on a web conference, whatever it is, like you're trying to just make connections with people. And I hear a lot of times financial advisors specifically, like they're really good planners and they're great investment advisors, really, really sharp at what they do. But what they're not specialists in is marketing oftentimes. So they need partners like us to help them out with that. But I think that, whether you're a business owner or like you're hiring an agency to do stuff for you, sometimes we conflate this idea with like, oh, we got to go digital. Like it's this huge, massive business transformation. And at the end of the day, if we can keep it as simple as the fact that like the goal of all marketing, whether it's print or social media or whatever else, it's just to simply make a connection between somebody who has a product or service and somebody who needs that. Like that's a really good place to start. When you understand that, like how are you getting clients currently? You're, helping your kid's baseball team with shirts, or you're, finding local businesses. Like the goal of digital is just to do that same thing at scale and to find an audience that's going to be like needing of your service. But I mean, really, digital marketing, I think it's funny because I joke with our team, like we're the cobbler that has no shoes, or the cobbler's kids have no shoes. And we're so focused sometimes on promoting other people's businesses that we sometimes forget to do it for ourselves. But this year, that was one of my big emphasis. Like, what are we going to do to actually like help grow our corporate marketing? And one of the things we started doing is just making a big emphasis this year on organic social. And for a long time, I've been like poo poo on organic social and like it's not worth the time and energy it takes. And like Facebook wants to monetize traffic and they're not going to give you views for free. That kinda changed this year with the short form video, and if you're like me, you sit, like, on your phone for way too long at night, like, thumbing through Instagram. I'm not a TikTok guy, but I know it's basically the same thing. Like, that's actually given organic reach to pages, but what it's done is it's made it to where your content actually has to be really interesting and good, because they're gonna reward you with views if people are interested in what it is that you're talking about, and if it's boring and it's not reaching people, then it's not going to. But I mean, to really summarize things, like a little nugget here is just like, don't make this more complicated than it needs to be. Like marketing, regardless of the form or fashion you try to do it, is just trying to make a human connection. And obviously, there's a ton of ways you could do it with the internet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Um, they don't overcomplicate it. I mean, I feel like that just reigns supreme in so many different areas, but especially marketing. I mean, we do, especially guys like you and I. When you get a little techie, it kind of overcomplicate things very quickly. And really, it's just a matter of, like you said, connecting people with your services and sharing
Yeah.
that story with those people. So in that realm of, given that we want to take this idea of sharing our story and connecting with people that need our services, sort of taking the word of mouth into the digital realm, what are kind of some of the basic starting points that a business kind of quick wins that we can do when we're just starting out, that it's like, all right, if you want to get into the digital side of marketing for your new screen print business, what are the kind of the first foundational elements that we need to have in place?
Yeah, that's a good point, Jesse, is that, what we do with paid traffic, and paid traffic is for mature businesses that have like proven
Mhm.
ROI, that are in scale
Yeah.
mode. When you get to that point, like you can pour gasoline on it with ads and like really, really grow a business. But I mean, surprise, like you're not profitable on day one all the time. You buy $2,500 of screen printing material and like, you're trying to get some jobs here and there, but like you're not going to go out and spend 3K on traffic just because you think that's a good way to
Yeah.
market. So kind of like guerrilla marketing strategies that I think are important. I mean, obviously having a website can help. I think it helps build credibility, but even today, like it's funny, this light behind me, this blue light, I decided I wanted one of these in my studio. And of course, there's a whole bunch of like shops out there that are on the internet and they'll build stuff
Mhm.
for you. And I actually found a local person who built these like herself. Like she had a little CNC printing machine and like uses the corded LED lights and like customize it the way you want. And I started my journey, like, talking to these, like, big box companies, and they're like, "Yeah, it's $480 to get one of these made," and then I started talking to this person, and, like, she has no website, she has no like, really, she runs her entire business off of Instagram and Facebook, and by the time I chatted with her a little bit and I was like, "I actually think she knows what she's doing, like, I think she's not a scammer, like, she can make this happen." But I will say, like, it was a really good product, really good service, like, exceptional, product, actually. But I was a little bit hesitant to, like, actually make a sizable purchase with her because there was no
Mm.
website, and I don't think you necessarily have to have that today, but I do think that if you have the ability to do it, I mean, there's so many easy drag and drop builders or even just, like, splash pages you can
Yeah.
build. I think it's a good thing to do, but I even see people running like pretty good businesses out of like Instagram accounts with like those link tree pages where it just had links to all the different services and products, like
Yeah.
to different social channels. So I would just, I think the big challenge that some people have is like if you've never done marketing before, and now you're running this business and you kind of have to do it, like the best skill you can develop is to try to put yourself in your consumer's
Mhm.
shoes. And like, how much does your product cost? Is it something that people just like throw $10 at and they don't have to think about it that much? Or are you asking somebody to make fairly large monetary commitment? And the farther up that scale you get in terms of like risk to a consumer, that's when you need to start thinking about branding a little bit more seriously. And I don't know, Jesse, like what an average order is for someone doing screen printing, but I mean, I know when we've done stuff for our team and we even have 10 or 20 t-shirts printed, it's a couple
Mhm.
$100. Like you want to be working with someone that's
Yeah.
reputable. So just put yourself in your consumer shoes and say like, hey, if I was making this level of like purchase decision myself, would I be comfortable with like the type of perception that's been out there? Um, so I think that's foundation number one is identity. And it's like a website or something that's like shows people that you're
Yeah.
legit. Um, so, and there's some others too. I don't know if you want to chat about that for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. The website part is just kind of an easy win. Oftentimes, again, this is another area where we tend to overcomplicate things where, your website doesn't need to be super flashy. It doesn't even need to be e-commerce. Like even with print shops, I see a lot of print shops out there. They'll use Shopify and they'll, add a product will be basically request a quote. And essentially at that point, you're paying for an e-commerce system that you don't need. And so it doesn't have to
Mhm.
be super complicated. It could be something as simple as Linktree. I think the foundation starting point for a website is the old 1990s mindset of it's a digital business card. And really that's it. That's all they need. They need to find your information, see that you are legit, like you said, have a domain name associated with your business and a way to contact you from there. And that's really all it takes to get started. And it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be a large investment. It can be, I mean, I've got, you can get hosting at DreamHost and do a free WordPress website and spend about $3 a month on that hosting plan. So it doesn't have to be a lot. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a great place to start to at least get some sort of identity on a website with your own domain name.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's kind of foundation one. And then, if you look at like what do you do from there? I, I really think that like what the internet has done and specifically social video is like it's giving you a window to look into anything. Like you can literally watch anything happen. I was watching a video today, it was like a construction video. I don't have any interest in like getting into the construction business or buying tools or whatever. And like watching this guy, do what he was doing was like fascinating to me. And I think even when we chatted the other week, Jesse, like I was saying that like the printing business is a very visual
Yeah.
business. And it's like the t-shirt is one thing, but like even like the idea of like putting the ink on the shirt and scraping it off and flipping it and like the little turn things, whatever they're called, like start spinning around, like that's really
Yeah.
cool. And I think anytime you've got something about your business, like people are as interested in the process as they are in the product.
Mhm.
And when you can show people like, this is what actually goes into making shirts, like you're going to alleviate like the price sensitivity that people are going to have when they realize that there's effort involved.
Yeah.
And they're also going to respect like the skill that it takes to actually go and do that.
Mhm.
And I mean, when you think about like why does somebody buy a customized t-shirt? Like I can go to Nordstrom Rack or to American Eagle and buy a t-shirt for $12 right now. Why would I go spend two or three times that to get something customized? Like you want to see exactly like your Alpine Apparel shirt right now.
Mhm.
Like you want to see your name in lights. Like you're proud of your
Yeah.
brand. And so I think when you give people like even one more thing, it's like, holy cow, man, this is what goes into making this for me. Like that's a really big it's a really big advantage you have in like some sort of physical business like that. And so, I mean, I feel like it's kind of a no-brainer to say this, but like video is a cheat code. And when you can show people like your expertise and like the beautiful product you create and the equipment that you have, like that's just a really important part of getting somebody excited about buying your
Yeah.
product.
Yeah, so you think, from the next step with a website, we'd be jumping into getting a social media account. What's your insight or input on, the temptation is always to get all the social media accounts and feel pressure to be active on all of them. Um, what would you say to people who feel that pressure? What's the best way forward when you're dipping into social?
Yeah, I think it's like all about knowing your audience. Like, where are your people spending their
Mhm.
time? And you don't need to be all things to all people. Like, you don't need a YouTube channel and a Twitter and a TikTok and an Instagram and a Facebook. I think there's like certain expectations that like Facebook and Instagram are kind of like the big players
Mhm.
out there. But I mean, if you're selling to a younger generation and you're making, I don't even know what kids are into these days, but like, cool music shirts or something, and that crowd is on TikTok, then like that's where you should probably be spending most of your time and energy. For us, like 75% of our audience over 55 are active Facebook users that spend like an average of 90 minutes a day on the platform. How many of those people are on Instagram? How many of those people are on X? How many of those people are on LinkedIn or TikTok? I don't really
Yeah.
know, but it's not a lot. And so we focus 100% of our energy into just the meta platform, which is Facebook and Instagram. But it really just comes down to like, where is your audience? And I mean, with video specifically, I think Instagram's kind of the king. I think Facebook's good for like a more mature, older
Yeah.
audience. And of course, TikTok for a younger audience. But I think just pick your platform and like, I think the best advice with this is just to go deep and not wide.
Mm.
Like, you're not like, if you spread yourself too thin and you put like half-ass 10 things instead of whole-ass
Yeah.
one thing, as Ron Swanson
Right.
would say, like you're not going to be delivering a very good product. And so, I mean, if all you had was an Instagram page and that's just where you invested, you'd probably be better off than trying to get like 6 different apps set
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Totally agree. I think, it's a healthy balance of where your audience is and what you're comfortable using. If you've never used TikTok before and you want to go after the TikTok audience, I think you probably need to either get ready to buckle up and do a lot of learning really fast, or maybe re-examine what audience you're trying to go after and look how you can reach that audience through the platform you're comfortable using. So I think there's a healthy balance there,
Yeah.
being where they are, but also because I mean, if you're not comfortable using it and you're never going to post on it, then it's a waste to even have it. Why even try?
Yeah.
You're fooling yourself.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely it.
um,
So I think social is good, but like an emphasis on video is really
yeah,
important. And then I think the other things that you can do that are kind of like the next step that maybe isn't necessary is like any sort of like long form content. And I've been following a bunch of guys, like as I try to create content for myself, like you've probably seen on our socials, we've been trying to release a couple videos
yeah,
every week. And so I follow a bunch of these like influencer types that are like helping you build an audience. And there's this idea of like the content ladder. And it's basically like micro content leads to mid form content, leads to long form content. And they say it takes roughly 7 touch points or 7 encounters with a brand before you actually want to
yep,
engage with them. And the way that looks like sometimes is like, okay, I watched a 30-second video of you on Instagram, and then I saw that you had a YouTube channel, and then I went from there and I like listened to your podcast. So you went from 30-second video to 4-minute video to like 60-minute audio
hmm
recording. So that long form content can take a lot of different shapes and sizes. I don't know that you necessarily need a podcast with a screen printing business. You could write articles and have like a Medium blog or something like that to deliver a little bit more if you want
hmm
to. But think about that as just like I had this experience. My wife and I own a house up in the mountains that we don't go to very often, and I was like, we should put this on Airbnb. And so I started seeing guys on Instagram talk about Airbnb businesses, and I found this one guy I really liked and started following him. And then in one of his reels, he's like, "Yeah, I had so and so as a guest on my podcast." I was like, "Well, I want to watch that." So I'm watching a podcast, and then ended up going to a webinar that he hosted, and then I ended up on a call where this guy's pitching me like a $20,000 membership course, and I'm like, "How the heck did I get here?" Like, I'm like superficially interested in this, and all of a sudden I'm like balls deep in this thing. But I think it's a perfect illustration of like 30-second video, hour-long podcast, like actual webinar, and then a coaching
yeah,
call. Like that's it's going to look different for each business, but that's the steps consumers take. So that's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
yeah.
almost like the very foundation, some sort of identity, some sort of visual content, some sort of long form content. I think that's kind of like as you grow, those are your steps you take.
Yeah, yeah, and I love the idea there is that you're not just creating content because it's what everybody does. You're not just creating a page on Instagram because that's what everybody does. You're creating an account and then you're posting the videos not just because you have things to share and the process is cool, but with a specific intention of, all right, I'm sharing these short things and what's my goal to get people out here. A lot of times our goal with social media is, I get likes and comments. Oh, that's great. That's my goal. Well, no, that's like that's the obvious part, that's the easy part. Like that's
Yep.
not the goal of the content. The goal is to get them to that next piece of content. And like you said, that goal is 7 of those, that you get them to watch
Hmm.
or be a part or ingest 7 different pieces of information or contact points with you And at that point, you're more likely to make that sale. From a sales strategy, we would talk about this as far as lead scoring, that you would eventually, what the goal is after that seventh touch, you've got what would be considered a marketing qualified lead. Like, hey, marketing says that I've touched this person 7 times. They're super interested. Let's have the sales team reach out to them and, move from
Yep.
there. So I think that's a great concept with social media is like it's not just about posting every day. It's about posting with an intention of driving people through this content ladder, like you pointed out. So I love that.
Yeah.
Aside from social media, I think while it is important, there's always this like elephant in the room that is it's a building and a foundation that somebody else owns. It's property somebody else owns. So it's hard, when you talk about that girl that was doing the sign, that basically all she has is an Instagram. And I thought, gosh, if Meta decides to change things, her business is dead. And, we don't want to be in that
Hmm.
situation. So what are some other things outside of social media specifically, and even maybe outside of the website that a business owner can do starting off to make sure that they are where people can find them?
Yeah. Well, I think it makes me think of a story. I went on a trip to play golf with my buddies down in Scottsdale a couple months ago, and it was this really cool outdoor mall type of area. But we were trying to find food, and we had no idea like what restaurants were around there. Like we like guys on guys trips, like we didn't plan anything. And so I open up my phone and I open up Google Maps and I search restaurants, and it was crazy. Like, I mean, I could probably see 10 restaurants from where I was standing, and there were like 5 pins on Google. And I'm like, "How is it that you're taking all this capital risk to build a restaurant, hire
Mm,
people, and have food and inventory and whatever, and you don't have a Google map listing?" Like, that is, I think, the number one way that I find local
yeah.
businesses is, like, I almost prefer maps over, like, actual Google search because, I mean, you can obviously set, like, the parameters of, like, the map that you wanna
Yeah.
search, and you kinda like, know where those people are at. So, someone doesn't wanna buy something, like, an hour and a half away from them, they're gonna have to go pick up or something like that. So, I think Google Maps is really big. I think that's one of the fastest growing search platforms out there. And as of right now, like, it's really not monetized that much, which means you're not competing against ad or paid
Mm.
traffic. And so, I think about Maps almost like Google pre-ad, like, maybe
Oh,
15
yeah.
years ago, where you've really got like a level playing field with big brands where you can get found. There's actually a gal in our neighborhood who has she's an esthetician and does like cosmetics and all that stuff, and she has a map listing on her house, and so it's not like you have to have like a physical
Mhm.
address. You know, if you search hair salons, Lone Tree, Colorado, she's going to show up because she's like right down the street from me. So I think that would be a really important one is like set up a Google My Business account, like give it an address, maybe link that to whatever stuff that you're building. So I think that's important. Um, and then outside of local search, I do think that, and this is going back to social to an extent, but like anywhere you can list products is a really good place because like people are probably searching for products on product
Mm.
sites. And Craigslist isn't necessarily like overutilized right now. I still look at Craigslist when I'm buying like cars or, some things where I just know people are going to list out there or services. Like if you're trying to find someone to cut your
Yeah.
grass, Thumbtack is another place like that. Or like Facebook Marketplace. It's really taken a ton of the Craigslist ad, or I guess traffic, but that's another really good place I think for like mid to lower tier products is to be posting on that. I don't know if you would necessarily consider Etsy to be the same thing as like Facebook Marketplace because that's kind of a monetized
Yeah.
platform. And you probably know a lot more about Etsy than I do, but those are the places that I would search for it. And I think I would for sure have like multiple listings on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist, and then consider if it's working for you and it's worth your time to go to Etsy too.
Yeah. That's a great point. I haven't even thought of those even myself. I think especially because they're free, there's no cost to do a Craigslist post or a Facebook one, Facebook Marketplace. Etsy does charge like 10 cents per listing per month, I think, for their listings. And they have some, I'm not sure how they feel about services. It's got to be a handmade product, which obviously, screen printing is, but it's not necessarily a bulk order platform. That would be kind of a one-on-one. So any shops that are doing things like DTF and one-off t-shirts and not full, minimums with high quantities and stuff. that might be a great area. So yeah, I like that. I like that idea. I'd be curious if anyone does try to post their services on something like Facebook Marketplace and um, Craigslist. I'd be curious to hear that works. I might try that myself because that's a unique idea.
Well, the reason I bring that up is actually back to this sign thing because I was searching for neon signs and I just searched on Facebook Marketplace for it. And the gal who did this, like she has like a non-customized, like a whole bunch of like a catalog of stuff that's like you can just buy
Right.
it. And one of them was like a big Colorado
Okay.
flag. And so that was actually the ad I saw was like the generic
Mm,
product. And then in the description, it's like, hey, like if you don't want the Colorado flag version, like we build these for brands and all sorts of custom
yeah.
stuff. And then there was a link to her social from there. So you could maybe get around that even on the platform like Etsy potentially where you have like a generic product that you
Yeah.
advertise and then kind of just let people know that you have custom services.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. There's a lot of shops that are just getting started. A lot of people that get into screen printing. It's one of two buckets. It's either you get into it knowing that you want to do it for other businesses, or you get into it wanting to build your own brand. And typically those people end up doing it for other businesses because there's more money that way. Well, there's more money
Right.
faster to print for other people than it is to try and create your own apparel line. It's a lot of work. So, but that's a great segue from one to the other. If you have some items you're willing to sell yourself, that you've kind of pre-created and you can sell like that and having that note at the bottom. Yeah, it's a great idea. All right, what else? Anything else that you can think of that would be kind of quick wins for people just getting started that just kind of help get their business out there?
Um, I think marketing is I had a conversation with a client the other day, like where does marketing end and where does sales
Mm,
start? And at some point there's that handoff. And if you're the one doing everything, it's like hard to distinguish
yeah.
that. But I mean, the best ways that I mean, we do multiple seven figures of revenue at our business. And I would still say that like maybe 70% of our business comes through like selling channels. And I think, like, reaching out to associations or any, like, niches where you think that there's gonna be opportunity, like, that's not necessarily marketing. I guess it is. It's gonna turn into sales at some point,
Yeah.
but, like, where we serve like, a lot of financial advisors also are insurance licensed, and the insurance distribution game is, like, very centralized. Like, you don't work directly through insurance companies, you work through, like, these middlemen
Yeah.
institutions. And so what we do is like we create value propositions to those middlemen, and then they ultimately become a referral source channel for us. So I'm just trying to think of like what's the equivalent in the screen printing business, and maybe like I mean here in Colorado we have like South Suburban Parks and Recreation, and like all these like youth sports programs like hockey and golf and tennis and soccer and baseball. And like if you were able to get some sort of visibility into an association like that, you may not necessarily like be advertising that or like getting people to click on an ad for like an association.
Mhm.
But if you could build a relationship there, then that can be a really, really lucrative way of selling. And once you get into like I think about, you know, here in Colorado, like half the state is mountains, the other half is like basically like high
Mm,
plains. And if you're ever flying over eastern Colorado and you look down, you'll just see like these shapes in the ground where it's like it kind of forms a valley and in the bottom there's a tiny little
mm,
creek. And the way I think about this in marketing is like there's water that's going to fall over like hundreds and hundreds of acres. Like who knows when it's going to fall or where it's going to fall, but where it's going to end up is for sure at the bottom of this
yeah.
gully, like where that creek is formed. And I think about institutions and groups as like that bottom of the ravine.
Mhm.
And so rather than trying to search like in all these hard to find places, like try to find where the business flows naturally. And groups and associations, I think, are a really great way to do that. So you may need some of the credibility stuff we talked about in order to have like the sway or input or like be able to earn the trust of a larger organization. But if you were able to get into like some youth softball league, then like not only is that like a huge selling channel for you, but you could put that on your website. Like, hey, we're actually the t-shirt printer for like this specific baseball team or this organization. But those things spread like wildfire. Like once you start to have that sort of like, oh man, like Jesse's actually legit. He's got like this group that he
Yeah.
works with. Like that stuff snowballs and it just grows and grows over time. So that I think is outside of all like the digital foundational assets you need to be building, a little bit of like sweat equity that you have to put in to build those. But man, those can be massively profitable. And you have like no expense associated with it. Like anything you sell to them is 100%
Yeah.
profitable.
Yeah. Great. Um, All right, cool. Well, I think this gives everybody some things to think about and some action items to get started. If they haven't already, like we said, obviously website being the first thing they should take on, and then establish which social media account they want to utilize, get their business listed on Google My Business. All of those things are free, to an extent. I mean, of course, there's ways to get a website up for free too. So all of this stuff is very low barrier to entry. So these have been great ideas, and appreciate your insight on those. One last question um, that I have for you, just kind of really offhand, and just maybe to help shed a little bit more light on digital marketing. What's like your favorite digital marketing book or person to follow right now that you're finding the best strategies and insights for your business that you feel like recommending the audience check out?
That's a great question. Um, I really like Neil Patel. He's a former Google employee, and like he kind of got famous back in the day because I think he like bailed from Google before he got his like payout and options or something
Yeah,
like that. And like his headline was like the $1 million I gave up and how I'm trying to make it back through content. And that was a long time ago. Now he's just kind of like a thought leader in the space in
yeah,
general. But I think what Neil does better than a lot of people is like you can get all hyped up watching Alex Hormozy and Gary Vaynerchuk videos, but, like, Neil is more of, like, a tactical
yeah,
person, and it's more of, like, here's, like, this six-page article that's gonna teach you everything you need to know about Google
yeah,
Local and really go deep in it, and he does that because his emphasis is
yeah,
SEO and content, but I think if you're trying I don't know that I necessarily would say he's somebody that you should try to emulate, but I think if you're trying to learn, he's, like, one of the best teachers, I think, in the space. So that's one that I would recommend, and I'm a big Ryan Deiss digital marketer
yeah.
fan. Ryan, he's kind of a platform that gives voice to a bunch of other
Mhm.
people, but I think sometimes we overlook, like, his genius itself, and that's kinda the way he
Yeah,
markets. But I love Ryan and almost anything a digital marketer puts out
cool.
too.
Yeah, I agree. Great stuff. I use Neil's got a software called Answer the Public. This is kind of a keyword tool, and it's really great. So he's definitely a great one to check out and follow. Like you said, especially in the SEO market,
Yeah.
which you know can be tempting to focus on that stuff early on, but get a handle on these foundational elements. But then I think SEO is probably the next step. Creating some content that way.
Yep.
So all right, man. I appreciate it. Again, great to talk to you. Appreciate you sharing with everybody, and I'm excited to hear the feedback and any other questions. But always a joy to talk to you. All right. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Jonathan. I just want to thank him again for being willing to sit down and share his expertise with you all by joining the podcast. So it was really great. Had a really great time interviewing him and talking to him about digital marketing. If you have any questions, or you want to share any light bulb moments or learnings or things that you feel like as a result of this episode you're going to use in your own business, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'd love for you to leave a comment. If you're listening to this on a podcast player of some kind, and you would be willing to leave a rating and a review, that really helps get the podcast out to more people. So I really appreciate that. But if you're not subscribed, or you're not following me on YouTube or Instagram, please go do so. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. That just helps the channel grow and reach more people. I do want to mention that this podcast and this channel is listener supported. While I am always willing to review products and give my advice or experience using certain things, I don't take any promotional financial gain from any other businesses. So I'm making this podcast and this YouTube channel be 100% listener supported by you all. So there are ways to do that. You can find those ways in the description below if you're interested in supporting or giving back in some way. But otherwise, if I just get your subscribe and your like, that's enough for me, and that keeps me going. It helps me encourage me to continue to make this content to support you and help you grow your business. So that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to bringing you the next episode next week. So be sure you're subscribed and tune in. Until then, have a great week.